Your high school counselor works for your school, not for you. That is the topic of today's video. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process on my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the USA, go to areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com, at which you will complete a free 3-minute assessment. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. I want to preface our talk today with the very important underscoring of the fact that most high school counselors, those who work in schools with high school students and help them navigate the college admissions process in the school setting, are well-meaning individuals, and they're also very professional individuals. Of course, there are outliers, but the vast majority are trying really hard and mean very well. But even so, they're working for the school or the school system. They're not working for you, the student, or you, the parent. And this is really important to understand because I have been a high school counselor. I've done so in the United States. I've done so abroad at very strong high schools where students and parents are very college minded. They have goals for what they really want after high school. And so a lot of pressure is put upon the college counseling office or the school counseling office in those settings to support students as they make the transition from high school to what comes next. So I can speak not just from what I've seen through the years as a college admissions coach when I work with students and families one-on-one and how they engage with their college counseling office. I can also speak from the perspective of having been a very successful high school-based counselor who supported students throughout the college admissions process. And what I can tell you, in all of those settings, even when I was doing a darn good job, and I was always doing a darn good job, right? I knew who I worked for, which was ultimately the school. And that's why ultimately I did not stay as a full-time college counselor and make my career doing that, because I personally really, really love working for the student and for the parents and for the family. And unfortunately, there are too many times when in the course of working for the school as the school counselor, you do have to make a choice between what's in the best interest of the school and what is in the best interest of the student or the family. And I feel like that was oftentimes an issue that was coming up more and more, which ultimately caused me in each of my school-based college counseling roles to ultimately leave those roles because it was that conflict, that friction between what is in the best interest of the student, what is in the best interest of the family, versus what is in the best interest of the school. And I felt like things were going too far in the interest of the school to the detriment. It doesn't always happen that it goes to the detriment of the family, even if you're working for the school. But if it was going to the detriment of the student and her family, I would become increasingly uncomfortable. And I would not be able to continue on in that situation. Now, again, these are very hard decisions that college counselors, school-based counselors have to make on a regular basis. And I don't envy anyone in a position that is quarreling in their mind and heart with the challenge of having to juggle the needs of various parties in the college admissions process. But again, I always personally defer to trying to remember who I really want to work for, which is the student and the family. So let me give you some examples. I mean, very benign examples. So, I mean, in most schools, the caseloads are such with college counselors where, you could be at a public school, even a high-performing public school, and the student-to-counselor ratio, it can be 300, 400 to 1. Right there, you know that the counselor is working for the school. The counselor is not working for the student because there's just not enough time for each individual student. They're basically having so many students that it's just there to sort of mitigate issues, basically, in that very scary scenario. In the scenario of even a dream scenario where you get basically a 25-1 counselor, a student counselor ratio. I mean, that's basically unheard of on a multi-grade level. It is sometimes heard of at very exclusive independent or private international schools where you can have maybe 25 high school seniors for one college counselor employed by the school. That is, by the way, if you're in a situation like that, that's like a dream scenario where 25 seniors to one college counselor, that's basically unheard of in the scheme of things. But even in those situations, there are situations where the counselor is torn between what's in the best interest of the student and what is in the best interest of the school. So a very obvious way when you have a large caseload situation is that many college counselors refuse to or unable to give you the attention you need early on in your high school career. Ninth grade and 10th grade, and even the first half of 11th grade, many times schools have formal policies or procedures where they say you really don't even get assigned a college counselor or a school counselor for your college admissions process until second half of 11th grade year. And if you do even get assigned one, or if you want to ask a question of one, you are often forced to jump through multiple hoops to get your answers delivered by a college counselor at the school, because those college counselors, again, they're very well-meaning in the vast majority of cases. They're focusing their attention and time and bandwidth on the urgent cases, the fires that need to be put out in the 12th grade class, the kids who are applying to college currently, the kids who want their essays looked at currently, the parents who are calling about transcripts delayed currently. That is, especially from August through December, the bread and butter of a school counselor whose primary role or even one of their major roles or the plurality of their time even is focused on college counseling and helping students apply to college. So you can imagine someone in that situation who has a ninth grade student or parent or a 10th grade student or parent with a question. Oftentimes those questions keep getting put on the back burner because there's only so many minutes in the day. So again, that's just a very benign example of how a school counselor is working for the school and not for each individual student. They can't. There's not enough time. But even as you progress later in the process, like I said, imagine still being in a class where there's 75 seniors to one college counselor. That college counselor is not going to be able to give enough personalized attention to the developing of the list or the reviewing of the essays of the high school senior as he or she would be able to in a situation where they had only 30 seniors in their caseload. But things get even more messy the deeper into the college admissions process you get. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are a student who wants to apply to Northwestern University and Washington University in St. Louis. And you're sort of on the fence. You're sort of leaning more toward Northwestern, but WashU is really exciting too. And you want the feedback from your college counselor, your high school counselor, about what he or she would recommend. Maybe you even have a family meeting. Your mom and or dad joins you. And this is maybe end of 11th grade year, early 12th grade year. And you're deciding, should you do both of these schools? Should you do only one of them? Should you do one ED? Should you do maybe one ED2 if ED1 doesn't work out? And that school counselor maybe has, let's say, 50 to 60 seniors or rising seniors if you're an 11th grader. And he or she may know that there are other students who are applying to WashU and Northwestern from your grade. And of course, they shouldn't share that information of who's applying where with the student. But knowing that information, the college counselors, whether intentionally or unintentionally, implicitly or explicitly, can make deductions in his or her head. Okay, what should I tell the student in order to, of course, help the student? Again, in most cases, the counselors really do want to help the students. That's why they got into this work. But also help the school. And so what do I mean by this? Well, let's say you are a really strong applicant. You could be a very compelling applicant at both WashU and Northwestern. But you know that 6 other maybe similarly strong or maybe not as strong applicants are applying to the other school, ED, or, and this student's on the fence between. You may very well push the student to the opposite school or the others. It's not opposite. They're very similar schools. That's why they're on the student's list. But the other school. So again, I forget what I was saying. But basically, let's say the student is very more heavily interested in Northwestern. But the college counselor knows that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 students are applying to Northwestern ED from this school already. This college counselor, even though the college counselor knows that maybe this is the top student in the grade, and therefore he or she would probably have the very best shot of getting in objectively and subjectively to Northwestern, knowing that there could be like a 5-car pileup to Northwestern in the fall, he or she could very well, they may not even realize it consciously, say, well, I would really consider WashU more. Because they're thinking about what's in the best interest of the student to some extent, but what's really in the best interest of the school. But this student could theoretically get into Northwestern. This could be the first choice Northwestern may have from the school. But to avoid the 6 or 7-car pileup of kids applying to Northwestern early decision, this person may know, because there's fewer people interested in WashU, let's just get this kid into WashU. We'll get a shiny object for the school. The kid will be basically happy because he or she already is sort of leaning toward the school, sort of. Maybe not, but they could go either way. So that way we take one chess player off the board for Northwestern, and we can have some of the students who maybe even not as strong as that student have a better shot of getting the 1 or 2 acceptances to Northwestern this cycle, because we can move over this kid, to a school that he'll just glide right into relatively, because no one else is applying. He's awesome, or she's great. So there's no question that student's going to be a great fit for WashU in terms of the profile they're going to present. That's a way right there that a college counselor can, with no ill intent, be thinking quite logically and rationally about his or her job and the results he or she is going to have to share with the board in the spring, or the principal in the spring that they're going to have to take back to the central office or the high school administration or whatever, and show the diversity of really amazing, well-known schools that kids are getting into. And this has been a twofer in the sense that this counselor is giving more students the chance of getting into Northwestern, but WashU now is going to probably get one too. And WashU is a very well-regarded school as well, of course. I mean, they're very similarly ranked depending on the year. Northwestern's higher in these areas, WashU's higher in that area. So it sort of balances out in the mind of the counselor. They can make peace with it. But was that right? Like, what if the student really wants to go to Northwestern? Then ultimately the school counselor has swayed things to the point where maybe they change their mind based off what the college counselor at the school said. Again, I'm not ascribing any ill intent to anyone in this scenario, but the counselor works for the school. There are so many other permutations and combinations of sort of things that can happen, particularly senior year, that can cause the counselor to be betwixt and between the needs of the student and the needs of the school. I could probably do a whole series on it, but my series often don't get a lot of views because it's repetitive and people think I've covered what they want to hear. But I could do a whole series on this. And it's tough. It's a really tough position to be in. Or just like, should you apply ED or regular to a particular school? If you as a counselor know that this student has a very pushy family or parent, and they're really set on college X, and this student has like no chance of getting in to the college X, but you want to give them the best shot, part of you wants to say, just do it ED because that's where you're going to get the best shot. And if it doesn't work out, you would never get in regular. But another part of you is like, well, do I want to present to that college a not serious applicant? How's that going to look to the college that I'm allowing, or not, it's not allowing, of course, you don't control the students or the family, but that I would sort of write a really strong recommendation for this student when I have 4 other kids applying ED. I'm going to look sort of like transparently fake if I have as glowing of a recommendation for my number 4 as my number 1, 2, and 3. And, they have to start changing their letters of recommendation a little bit so that the letters of recommendation are obviously very positive, but not as positive as the other 3, because otherwise you look like a fraud as a college counselor. But then the problem is the college counselor only writes 1 letter of recommendation. So oftentimes the slightly more tepid letter of recommendation could end up going to all the regular schools too once that kid gets rejected from an ED school. So things happen all the time. And like the counselor doesn't have enough time to write 5 or 6. I used to do it before the Naviance stopped letting you do it. I used to write different letters of recommendation for each student for each school. Most college counselors never have that luxury of doing that. I did because I was extremely obsessive. But but then it stopped working because Naviance and other platforms that you send transcripts and recommendations with stopped allowing you to write different letters of recommendation for different schools for different students. So you couldn't curate it to appropriately speak to that student's fit for that particular college. You just had to write a generic one. But that's the problem when the first letter of recommendation is to a school where other kids from the school are applying. Then the college counselor, if he's or she's thinking about, what's rational to share, not in any way going to write a negative letter of recommendation, of course not, but will focus on different topics, focus on different things, then maybe he or she would have focused on if the letter of recommendation had been written for just regular decision schools or another first choice school. And sometimes, again, if the parent is really aggressive and says, no, Johnny has to apply to Dartmouth early decision, we just have to know. But as the college counselor, Johnny has no chance of getting to Dartmouth unless they've built a library for Dartmouth, which in some cases they have, but maybe they haven't. Then at that point, you basically have to go along because you're working for the school. Yeah, the family too. You can't say, I'm not going to do it for you. Of course you're going to do it for them. You're working for the school. You want to keep the customers happy at the school, whether it's a private school or public school. You write the letter, but then you don't follow up and you can't change the letter of recommendation later. I'm not saying it's going to be a drastically different letter, but maybe you do it because you have 2 or 3 amazing kids applying to Dartmouth and you need to emphasize the fact that you recognize that they are different. And the rankings you give on your counselor evaluation form maybe are a little bit more depressed as a result of what Dartmouth is going to see from you and from the other 3 or 4 or 2 appliers for ED. But that's not going to matter at all in 3 or 4 months when the student is just scraping by to get into a non-Dartmouth school regular. Let's put it that way. Like, let's say they're trying to get an SMU in the spring. You probably would have written a much more robust letter of recommendation just to seal the deal with SMU for regular after this kid got basically blown away ED round, maybe even ED2 round, and now is stuck being fed to the Sharks regular. The family's just going to be happy to get him into SMU. SMU, by the way, is a lovely school, but it's not nearly as selective as Dartmouth. Everyone knows that. So you do understand my point and how these decisions, because the counselor works for the school, you just have to be, again, not saying to be leery around your high school counselor, be as professional and kind and respectful to your college counselors. Honest, I would say keep those lines of communication open as much as possible. The sad thing is most of the time the college counselors in the school can't communicate that much to you, again, because their caseloads are obscene. So you can try to communicate as much as you want. You can try to develop a strong relationship with your college counselor, but ultimately just know that college counselor's paycheck is coming every 2 weeks, not from you. It's coming from the school or the school system. And so that is a very powerful motivator. At the end of the day, he or she needs to maintain that job. They may have mouths to feed back at home or an apartment rent every month. They can't prioritize your needs as the student or the family over the school's needs or their job security. And again, this is completely rational. It would make complete sense if you find yourself in that situation. Trust me, I've been in that situation and it's tough. There are even more painful decisions that sometimes have to be made. And again, oftentimes when you're working for a school, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and do what's in the best interest of both the student and the school. But there are frankly too many instances when you're having a big caseload and there's only so many minutes or hours in the day where you have to make a choice between what's in the best interest for your mental health, your ability to sleep at night, your ability to maintain your position, your ability to please your boss, your ability to please your board, and whoever else you report to, and also the needs of the students and the parents. And there's just too many, unfortunately, frictions there. And that is why, one of the reasons why, of course, people like me can even exist and have a role to play in this process, because it is important often to get a second opinion. It is important often to get just a fresh pair of eyes, whether it be spending more time on your essays or giving you more feedback on the list. It doesn't mean that me or someone in my role as sort of a third party or a second opinion is always right. Of course not. That would be wrong to state it too. It's not like this position that I'm in now as a college admissions coach, not working with students in a school full time, doesn't mean that this is the better position to be in or is always going to be able to deliver things that the college can't. And actually, I can't do things that the college counselor in the school can do. I can't write your letter of recommendation for you. I can't make phone calls for you. I won't. Okay? I can't see what the teacher recommendations look like and therefore decide if they need editing. Those are things that only a school-based counselor can do. So there are things that empower a school-based counselor that require you to continue to keep that person on your side and in support of you and engage with you throughout your college admissions process. So do not throw out the baby with the bathwater. This person is important for what he or she can do for you, but also, it's an important role. You respect this person. They're trying their best. In my role, there are things that I can do that a school-based counselor can't do. And so these are just important things to understand, because I can say things to you when I'm working with you one-on-one that I can never get away with when I'm employed by a school, both in terms of words used, but also being less politically correct, let's put it that way, than I would have to be when I'm in any school setting in the United States of America now, or even in an international school, which I've worked at international schools as well. There's when you're employed by a school, you can only go so far with a family. Whereas when you can work privately with them, you can say things, you can be real with them in ways that you can't, because you can't offend the sensitivities of other individuals that they know you are working with, that are in your caseload. And I don't even get me started on when you're one of multiple counselors in the school, and you're either the boss of those counselors, maybe you're working with the director of college counseling, or you're working with the junior member of the team, the newer college counselor, and the dynamics that creates sometimes, and the frictions and the insecurities on the part of both counselors, but also on the parts of families, can cause a lot of friction and a lot of issues depending on how that office is run. If it's run as a tight ship, which I always try to do, or if it's run as in a loosey-goosey way and with a lot of personal and emotional animosities and different things going on. I mean, I could write a book on this, having worked in different school settings, in different genres of environments, different cultures, all of which were really enjoyable in their own way, but each of them had a time and a place, let's just put it, in my life. Like, I could not continue in any of those roles where I am today psychologically, compared to where I was then, because there was a time and a season for those things, and those times and seasons have passed. So that's where I'll leave that. But in any case, just know these things. If you are a student, if you are a parent, or even if you're a counselor, I mean, these are things to think about, so that you can just do the best you can, and you can sort of live with yourself at the end of the day. And so especially if you're a student or a parent, work aggressively with and respectfully with your school counselor, but also know that that person ultimately works for the school. And if that concerns you in any way, shape, or form, or gives you pause where you think that maybe I do want a second opinion, or I do just want to hear from someone else their view of the situation, not because anyone's intentionally doing anything wrong or is incorrect, because a lot of this is all based off of subjectivity, but just to get a different view so that I can be edified for my own child or my own self. That's where someone like me could come into play, where you would say, I want another pair of eyes on this essay, or I just want another pair of eyes on this list, to be sure, knowing everything I bring to the table, what my options really are, what really is a safety versus a possible versus a reach. These are all things just to know about, and to consider, so that you as a student, you as a family, can navigate the college admissions process as successfully as possible. Again, to the counselors who may be watching this video, no harm, no foul. I do not mean any negativity toward you. I was once in your shoes as a full-time college counselor in a school. I respect that role. I particularly respect the role of director of college counseling, where you're actually managing a team, because I've had that role multiple times, and it's tough. It's a tough thing to do, to juggle all the responsibilities that the school puts on you. So again, complete props to you and respect to you, because these are tough roles, where all of us are just trying to do our very best on a daily basis and be as professional as we could do. I mean, I guess not everyone's trying to do their best, but the vast majority is trying to do their best every day, in support of what we probably all got into this role for, which is which is to support people making the transition from high school to college, and self-discovery and figuring out what they want to do in the world and reaching their true potential. So my name again is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to my channel. If you want to work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, go to my website, collegemeister.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay stress-free throughout the entire college admissions process.